All right, welcome everyone to Unfinished Legacy. I forgot the name for a second, but I'm in a color edition. We're in the 7th episode. I know time is flying. During here, it's been a regular in the past. I'm sure y'all remember him. We got some new folks. We'll get some introductions going. But for today, we kind of talked about it a little bit in a part of a previous episode. But I was just hanging out and thinking about TV, and it made me think about like masculinity and how that shows up in like movies, television, what that looks like. I was watching Fresh Prince the other day. That made me think about it, right, Uncle Phil? We can get into all that kind of stuff in a little bit, but I just like it's really fascinating to think about like how does that tie into like who we are. And there's also generational pieces too that I think will be interesting to kind of like dive into and how that shows up. But anyway, before we get into that, for those of you if it's your first one, my name is Brian Palomo. I'm a senior coordinator here in Thrive. And I'm excited. Thank you all for coming to watch. I'll let the rest of the folks kind of introduce themselves.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Durham Begay. I'm coordinator also here in Thrive. So it's good to see you all.
I'm Julio. I'm a newcomer here, and I'm a peer educator in financial wellness here at the Thrive Center. So
we're in the camouflage. Can y'all see him? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm Adam. I'm a peer mentor here at Thrive.
Welcome, Julio. Welcome, Adam. I'm very excited to have y'all here.
Mm-hmm.
So we just kind of like jump right in. Like I said, I don't have necessarily like exact questions, per se, but just I don't know what comes to mind for you, right? Like, so when you think of like a TV dad, who comes to mind first?
Modern Family.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who's the dad in that?
There's a few, and I feel like they're all very different.
Oh, okay. This is good. Okay. Let me give me some.
Yeah, you got like people tell me I remind them of Phil Dunphy because he was like a cheerleader in college, and I am too. And like,
is that the only similarity? Is this y'all both?
Yeah, but he's also just like I don't know. I get that a few times.
Oh, okay. So can I call you Phil?
Sure. Yeah.
Right, cool.
I don't mind. I love him. He's a great character. And then there's Cam and Mitchell.
I've seen like videos of them. Like I've watched a little bit of Modern Family, but I haven't watched all of it. Because Modern Family is the one that has what's his name? That he was in that other sitcom. Oh my god. Do you know?
I have not seen Modern Family, to tell you the truth.
Oh my god. What's the name of that actor? Isn't that the one that like with
The
Sophia?
grandpa.
What's the actor that plays?
I don't know I forget his name.
You would know him from his other.
Yeah. Because I feel like that's the type of
I'm just
actor
gonna
he
Google
is.
this,
He's like
y'all.
a dad in a sitcom. But it's like...
But I've seen some of it. I haven't watched the show that much, but I know it's Ed O'Neill from Married with Children.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. He's Al Bundy. That's another TV dad, but that's like a 80s, 90s TV dad.
Yeah.
I think the show started like 88 or something, and then it was on for like 10 years. And he was a football player too, actually. Like, I don't know if y'all knew that, but anyway, yeah, the one with Ed O'Neill in it.
Okay.
I've seen clips of it, and I've seen a couple episodes, but what do you mean by they're very different? Like, what do you?
You got... So I'd say like Phil Dunphy's like kind of like this very cheerful, like silly guy. I think he's a magician. He likes to do it on his free time.
Okay.
And you got Cam and Mitchell. They're both dads to a daughter that they adopted. So the show gets like their relationship of like raising their own. And then Ed O'Neill. He's like an old, like kind of like grumpy old man. So they all like kind of are very different, but realistic. It's very realistic.
Which I think that's like part of the point of the show too, right? Like the whole Modern Family, like it's supposed to be like. So I feel like that's part of like where even this like conversation came from is like how dads on TV are like typically depicted and like families in general, But I don't know. That's interesting that you say that. Wow.
I think there's another one. I think it's called Bajo la misma luna or something. And I think if I'm correct, it's where the dad is like caring for like the daughter who gets sick and stuff. But in that one, I kind of seen the representation of an actual present, caring father figure. Where I feel like in other typical depictions, especially with men of color, it's like a Mexican dad could be like the dismissive one, the avoidant one, and they usually just like stick to like a one kind of role in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like sometimes though it's hurtful, especially like for certain stereotypes of Hispanic men when we're represented in media and everything. But that one, I think that movie did a really great job of showing an active present dad.
I can't really think of any one, but I think what really resonate with me. This might be kind of older shows, but Different Strokes was one.
Oh,
we all know Different Strokes.
I do.
And I think that really kind of breaking like barriers and like color identities, right, or personal identities, gender identities, things like that nature, but also disparities in economic status, right, things of that nature, and what was going on, or what continues to go on in society and impacting us. Because the gentleman, Mr. I forget his name, but the gentleman, Mr. Drummond, he's a white male, older white male, has a daughter, doesn't have a wife, but he has a maid. He's very well off, rich, wealthy individual, and he lives in Upper Manhattan, I believe it is, and he adopts two brothers, and it's Willis and his brother Arnold, and they're both identified as black. And so, the dynamics of how he raises them and brings them into the family, but also how they are teaching him too as well, and his daughter, and the surrounding communities too, about, what disparities that they have been faced with, in front of with, and what they're trying to deal with, and trying to bring that together as a family dynamic. It's pretty interesting. I look at Drummond, Mr. Drummond, just because he has to be humble. He has to step out of his comfort zone in a lot of different ways too as well. And so that kind of shows a different component of what it's like to be a dad in a very changing world, right? And so I think those are some things that kind of resonate with me with that show. There's other ones too, I think. Red Foreman. That 70s shows what that shows out of, because
is that you as a dad?
Not me as a dad, but I know.
Like to put your foot.
Sometimes you feel like that, though. I ain't gonna lie, as a dad.
Can the producer put Red Foreman's face on for a sec, please?
No.
I want to see what it looks like. I feel like it might fit well,
But you do feel like that as a dad, though, with kids. Like I have a daughter who's moved out, has her own. She's married on her own, and I have a son too. He moved out. And he's on his own, but growing up, trying to raise children, and not only that, but niece and nephews, things of that nature, right? You're a family unit, and not only that, but distant relatives too. Your niece and nephews from different family members, right? You're an uncle, you're a dad, older brother, but you're also that mentor. You're trying to instill these teachings with them. As a dad figure, as an uncle figure, you have that right. In our culture, with your sister's side of the family, right? If it's on your sister's or your mom or dad's side, you have that right to do that, to discipline your niece and nephews and try to instill some teachings with them on an everyday basis. You have that right. And so, it's just a lot to kind of think of when you think about Red Foreman, because, he loses his temper, but at the end of the day, he's still a dad figure. He still has compassion in a lot of different ways, because of his wife too balances that out too as well. In some ways, in some ways.
Yeah, but
he loses it. Well, he loses it. But that sometimes I feel like that. I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes we do.
It makes sense. Well, it's like funny. Once we were, I was having this conversation a little bit, Lee and I were talking about this a bit yesterday, and our producer behind the screen. But I kind of had a revelation, I guess, or so. I was just thinking about when it came to what I grew up watching and what I was seeing. It was obviously the George Lopez, but the big one for me is Uncle Phil.
Yeah.
Right. I love Fresh Prince. It's probably my favorite, or it's top 5 shows for me. I absolutely love that show. But he's also pretty. I would say, let me know in the comments, or y'all can let me know if I'm wrong. But I feel like he's pretty universally seen as one of your quintessential father figures in TV, and very in a very positive light, which I'm not saying that he shouldn't be, but I started to think back and honestly, Uncle Phil is not the most emotionally intelligent of a man, right? He at the end of the day, he has lots of love, and he ends up sharing it, right? And he makes Will feel like he has a father, all that kind of stuff, but he yells a lot, he doesn't really, he's very rash. I don't know, it's interesting, right? It's just interesting to think about, because and that's part of what I was starting to think about, but I feel like Red is not necessarily put in he's kind of supposed to be seen as not necessarily a bad dad, but
stern,
but Uncle Phil is supposed to be I don't know, he's just seen as very loving by a lot of people. I was just interesting to think about. I don't know. And so I think of and I just got me thinking how did things that I saw growing up and what I was watching or all of us, right? How did that then flow into I'm not a father, right? I mean I have a dog, so I guess there's that. But I kind of talk to my dog like Uncle Phil sometimes now that I think about it, and like George Lucas. So I don't know, maybe it did impact me. But it just made me think about that, how did that, and I think that kind of segues into another, what were kind of the male role models that you were seeing, right, as you were watching TV, and then I guess kind of related to that, do you feel like it had an impact on you and how you are today and how you view masculinity? It could be either way, right? I feel like I watched Red Foreman be a dad, and I was like, that I don't want to be Red Foreman, things it could even be the other way around. But I guess I'm just curious on that too, so when you think about that as you were growing up, what were kind of the examples?
I mean, growing up myself, I feel like I've seen a lot more animated, kind of Disney.
Yeah, you were saying that, right? Yeah.
A film that came to my mind was Meet the Robinsons.
I
don't know why, I just feel like the dads in there is just, it's a really interesting example, but for me, it's seeing, I guess throughout the movie at the end, it's where the dad was himself such a supportive and wanting to foster growth in his own son and just being that present father. I feel like that really inspired me to when I grow up and I become a dad, it's how I want to raise and what I want to instill in my kids. Gave me sort of an idea from a young age.
That makes sense. Anybody have any thoughts of maybe even just beyond even just fatherhood, just men that we were seeing on I don't know what comes to mind. I think about that old cartoon, the Johnny Bravo. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's he's just I don't know, that was wild though. It's maybe they did, maybe it was so overt that it was trying to be my hope is that it was just satire of that, so it's hopefully
that hyper
but
exaggerated.
but people are impressionable, so I wonder, we are seeing an influx of alpha males, how many watch Johnny Bravo as kids? I don't know, it's interesting, I don't know, but that's one thing I think, what comes to mind when you're thinking about the stuff you watch?
Mulan.
Oh,
There's
okay, say more.
you have your what's his name?
What did you say?
The main guy. That's
The Mulan,
we're talking about Mulan, okay.
the one that
I don't know his name.
Yeah.
it's something Shen.
Yeah.
Isn't it I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, we know what you're talking about. We can put his picture up.
He's he's what's it called? The perfect model. And there's the other guys who show up with Mulan that are got the short little angry guy.
Yeah, and the fat
And
guy.
The big fat guy and the skinny little guy. I feel that's just representation, Maybe you see yourself in a little bit of yourself in all of those people. It's
Interesting. Yeah. And they end up being heroes in the end too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, they all.
They do a big part, and yeah, that's interesting.
Even Mulan.
That's pretty.
I think that's hard too. What we saw, I think they keep bits and pieces, right, of certain individuals or men of color that we notice in media. At least for me, that's how it is, right? Even though I made a connection with Mr. Drummond and Red, right, from that '70s show. But nonetheless, there's bits and pieces that I took, watching these people in media and stuff like that, right? When I watch these shows that I grew up with, taking bits and pieces of what I was going through growing up, right? And yeah, those what you mentioned, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that, and try to stay away from those. But there are situations and times that where those things do come up, and you all become kind of like that too in some way or some form, just through my own personal experience, But then you always work to be better. I think those are the key things that I took from a lot of people or men of color who are in media throughout the years and decades, right? I've been watching. It's there's always room for growth. There's always time for to change too as well. But it's hard too, especially as a male of color who identifies as Native American, and you didn't have that kind of audience or that kind of viewership or somebody you can connect with out there. There's always someone from a different cultural background. Maybe they were Native American, but they never stated it too as well. So it's really hard to make that connection because looking at disparities of what they grew up like, even the background context of location, the stage setting, it had nothing to do with, you know, the reservation out in the middle of nowhere, right? No running water, no electricity, hauling wood, hauling water, you know, taking care of, you know, livestock, stuff like that. I mean, Little House on the Prairie would come close to that, right? Michael Landon, right? Because he was a great father, man, all around, you know. Even Highway to Heaven, when he played that role in that too as well. He was a great father figure, you know, and he always instilled those teachings. I think those are some of the closest ones that kind of resonate with me in a sense. But yeah, it's very difficult, but, you know, I think those are some things that I think about when I see these different media aspects of men of color.
I'm trying to think what I usually would end up seeing. I just feel like, and you start to bring up some good points too, you know, I think it's important thinking about like how intersectionality shows up too, you know, like when we're thinking about these media portrayals, how much does that shift if we're talking about men of color, or we talked about class a little bit already, like how does that show up differently? There's even also like different sexualities, and we touched on it a little bit with Modern Family, but not that much, right? And the fact that there really isn't usually, that's part of what makes that show like what it is, because that's not like it's like very taboo, right? Like typically it's a nuclear family, right? You're very like man, woman, 2 kids, usually like older daughter, younger son, right? Like that's just like, that's what that 70s show is like that. George Lopez is like that. I don't know, there's probably more that I can't think of right now. The Simpsons. Bart's older, but they do have a son and daughter. Yeah, but anyway.
I also wouldn't, I've learned to not be like Homer.
yeah, true. But I guess my point is that like it's usually like there's like a very like there's like a mold, like a cookie cutter, like of how it and there's things that are trying to break out of that. So I think there's also that aspect too, right? Like it's very like centered on like heterosexual relationships and all of that as well.
There was a show that really kind of resonated with me too. Just it really caught my interest, right? When I was younger, it was about 2 dads that raised a daughter. I forget the name of the show, but they were wonderful parents to that young lady. I just forget the name of the show, but it was on for a couple of years, you know, a couple of series, and it was a wonderful show how they raised and the different dynamics that they had to go through as a couple. I don't know if there were a couple. I think they were just best friends, and they grew up and they raised this young lady. But that was a good show too. So I was looking at how that can be, you know, it can cross in various different ways, different roles and responsibilities. I think it was that aspect of gender roles, right? Gender roles and responsibilities, right? Because we always had that old mentality, like, this is you belong outside, you belong doing this. As a male, you should be doing this. As a female, if you identify as a female, you should be doing this, right? But the genders were just 2, that was it, and that's all I looked at. They didn't look at anything else or at the fluidity of sexuality or gender identities or even responsibilities when it comes to relationships and how you should take those roles on. But it doesn't matter if you're a male, you should be doing, you know, other things inside the house, right? You should be taking care of the home and cooking and things of those nature. It wasn't set something that you're only stuck to this and that's it, right? So I think that's what really kind of jumped at me from that TV series show.
But that's kind of like part of my like, you know, I feel like typically when I think of like a TV dad, right, it's like works some crappy job he hates, comes home, sits on the lazy boy. You know, like wife makes him dinner, he's all grumpy, right? Like Homer, right? Yeah, exactly. Al Bundy, Archie Bunker. I mean, even Red Foreman, right? Like, and I guess that's like part of my point. But also, those are all white dudes.
Yeah.
So like, it's interesting to think about them. Like, and then like, when I think of like the like stereotypical like black TV dad, it's like very different. You know, like.
The Jeffersons.
Yeah, or what's the Carl Winslow one where he's a cop and you're like, what the heck are they talking about? Sorry, we got Gen Z. I forgot. We gotta modernize our takes. But it's just very like different. Like Uncle Phil. It just I don't know. It's interesting. Like none of them are like they're not just like grumpy dudes that just I don't know.
Meet the Winslows. I don't know if you all see that show.
It honestly doesn't.
But like, it's interesting. Like, why? What about what's the one that used to be on Disney? They were Anime, yes. Y'all seen that? Damn.
Not that I'm
Yeah.
See, that one I need to catch up on.
I was close. I was trying to find, but that's another. I mean, it is Black TV, Dad. I don't know.
Because
It's
there's
just
like
interesting.
it's Everybody Hates Chris or something.
Yeah.
I feel like that family was like
Yeah.
like the
That's
way
a
the
whole
dad
another
was,
because he's like, yeah. I mean, Terry Crews is just like cheap, but that's a different because that's based on his childhood though, right? So I think that's a little, it's like, you know what I mean, like versus like fully fictionalized, I
Have
guess.
you ever seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs?
I have.
You know the cop in that one?
Oh,
Okay.
That's
okay,
actually
okay.
Get somewhere.
Very emotional, but
Mm-hmm.
not at the same time.
Mm.
He loves his son, but
But I just
Like on the
think-
outside, he showed this like he was like this cop persona, this big guy, like
Mhm.
does everything to protect the people and his son. But then
Yes.
like deep down with his son, he's like a soft guy.
yeah, he's like emotional.
And, yeah.
It is interesting to think about that though, like what I was saying, like how all these like all those like is that I never thought about that like all the like patriarchal like misogynistic like angry dads on TV are like they're all just angry white dudes.
yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. Like, is that
But
like?
then I feel like that can kind of tie back into like what us like men of color is like what we thought should have been our norm because it's like everything was represented by like a white actor, a white male, and it's like, well, what are we supposed to stem our own beliefs besides like?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I mean, right? Is that like even like when shows were popping up, like the vibe wasn't like all these other shows that we're thinking of, or like George Lopez, or I'm trying to think what are some other like men that are like not white from shows. I'm trying to think.
George Jefferson, I think
Yeah.
he was always angry.
That's true. That's true.
He's a comic too, but same.
That's probably like part of the time. So
Yeah.
that's really what it probably is too.
It might be part of the times.
Like it was like a very different. But anyway, I feel like that's like a big thing that like you're watching that, and that's like it really reinforces these strong like gender roles and like I'm going to provide, and I come home and like everyone just needs to like bow down to me and like give me what I need and leave me alone while I watch my football and drink beer and Archie Bunkeroo's big cigar, reading the paper, like stuff like that. Where it's like, and then the wives are usually like depicted as like very like aloof and like very like like I mean I'm still sticking with All in the Family too, but she's like it creates this like dependency kind of like piece too, which is really fascinating.
That goes back to even past like earlier decades of like movie stars too, like not just men of color, just men in general, like the Honeymooners, right? And you got Lucy Ball, right? The Lucy Show, Three's Company. Even though they weren't married, but you still had to build the landlord, right? Always upset, and the wife's always there to kind of call, just kind of aloof, like you mentioned. But at that point too, it also shows the strength of women too in some of those roles. But nonetheless, focusing on the men, it seems like they were all mad. A lot of them was like, oh, people just mad about things going on. Like that's kind of things that jump out at me a lot.
We'll be wrapping up soon, so I want to ask the Gen Zers in this space. I want to ask a question. So, if you're thinking back, like growing up from what you did watch, I mean, Doreen, you can answer this too, but I just want to hear from them as well. Like when you think about like the character, like the male role model from a screen that like felt like had like the biggest impact on you, or like that you like I don't know, like who comes to mind? From what?
Yeah.
From Disney that you were watching, or from maybe it's from Modern Family that you were watching, but like what had like a huge impact on like who you are today? Anybody? Just curious. I know it's a tough question.
And I'm trying to think
Yeah.
real quick. Like,
I know like for me, probably Uncle Iroh from Avatar. Like for real, like he's definitely up there. Like I've seen that show many. I mean, I'm like the Target-ish. Like I watched it as every week when it came out, kind of thing. And I was able to watch it like after school and everything like that, and I love that show. So like I think that's a big like, but I really like his like demeanor and how he's like he's also very like able to like given like his past, he's still like very like I don't know what the word he uses, like impartial almost, where he's like trying to like see different sides, and I don't know, I just feel like a lot of that has really shown up and like spoken to how I view a lot of things in terms of like conflicts and how I approach a lot of things. So like that's an example that comes up for me for sure. How about this? What was y'all's favorite movie? Okay.
Well, I could think of one.
Okay.
So it's called Back at the Barnyard.
Ooh.
So Otis, he's like this teenager cow who just wants to like party with his friends.
Mm-hmm.
But his dad is like, you need to like grow up, help protect the farm animals.
Mm-hmm.
And Otis doesn't do that. And then there's one point in the movie where, well, it's a spoiler. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But he's like playing his guitar, and then the coyotes come to eat all the chickens. So then the dad fights off all the coyotes, saves the chickens, but he ends up dying because of his injury that he sustains.
Damn.
And it's like really impactful because Otis then is like, okay, it's my turn. So he eventually saves the chickens again from the coyotes, and he like takes on that role. So it's like, yeah, I think of that part a lot.
Are you Otis or are you the dad?
That's a good question. I feel like
Or
I'm
are you
Otis.
the chickens?
I like to just party a lot, not. I'm very much Otis. I feel so tough.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of like a real life kind of character, or
Mhm.
I don't know, because my favorite Disney thing was Cars. Like you're Lightning McQueen, you're Mater, like so I couldn't really pick a
Are
thing.
you Lightning McQueen?
In some,
Yeah,
I
are
really
you-
feel like I could.
Are you a Ka-Chow? Is that you?
No.
Yeah. You gotta do it to the camera, not me.
That's true.
It's a Phoebe.
Yeah.
Our producer.
Got a lot of editing to do for this one.
Oh, really?
Lightning McQueen is an interesting example of masculinity. I mean, he is.
Because I feel like even though, he was like this big, I feel like he had a really big ego. It's what got him off to like off-road, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like deep down, he still showed like you care about your friends, you take care of those, take care of you, to look out for everyone around you, and then you foster this community. And it's, I feel like he learned, throughout the movie, like the attention, the fame, all this and that is not worth it. And it's kind of like growing up is just very close to me.
Yeah.
Can I throw one out there?
Yeah.
Finding Nemo.
Marlin.
Right.
Marlin.
He's a dad.
Mm-hmm.
He is a
And
dad.
he's not angry. Well, he gets angry.
Well, he gets
He's
angry.
frustrated with
But but he swam the whole ocean.
Yeah.
looking for
All
his-
the way to P. Sherman,
He's
42 all
Nemo
the way
was all he
Sydney.
had.
Yeah, all he had.
Yeah.
What comes to mind is Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox.
The
First one, the original
the
one.
movie, like the
Yeah,
the movie
the
with
movie.
Michael J. Fox.
Not TV show, but that movie. The dad
Yeah,
kind of, I think that kind
yeah.
of
With the owns
try
a
to.
hardware store and all
Yeah.
that.
Not to say I'm that kind of a dad, but every day you always trip
Are you
and
a
fall.
werewolf?
No, it's just, I think the werewolf part, like the changes that you go through.
Yeah, of course. But he just like comes in and like, because when he learns about it, he like opens his room to leave, and his dad's there like as a
Yeah.
werewolf, and he's like, I wanted to tell you sooner, son. But
Exactly. But through that whole process, he didn't
Y'all
get
should watch
mad.
that if
He
you
didn't
haven't
get
seen
mad with Marty too, right? He tried to guide him.
Mm-hmm.
Guide him, make your own decisions. But he laid down some
Yeah.
standards, but not too much.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we got to start wrapping up. But I mean, that's kind of like some of the stuff that I was, really,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of generally interested in like thinking about, because I feel like we got to start highlighting a little bit more of that kind of stuff too. Of like what are some really like positive examples, like really healthy examples of masculinity that are showing up? Because like typically it feels like, which again we alluded to in a previous episode, like whenever we see like men on like movies and TV shows and even video games and things, or even TV ads like the Old Spice dude and things like
Yeah.
that. Like they're very like macho, like aggressive, talking down to other people, like things like that, But we just, another thing that really sparked this conversation is that if everyone could be like Bandit from Bluey, the world would be a better place.
It really would.
Right? That's part of what like made me think about, like my niece loves Bluey,
Mm-hmm.
and I was watching it with her. I'm like, damn, like Bandit is so in tune with his like emotions and
So
like comfortable
open-minded.
with himself. Yeah, he doesn't care about judgment. He's just it's great. It's just awesome. Be like Bandit. But anyway, like, do y'all have any other last second? We got like a minute or so before we gotta wrap up. Anything that you want to make sure people see? What are some other positive examples you want out there?
kind of just an observation. I was kind of like, I'm curious to see how like the pop culture and media as it continues to grow, and I mean, people wanting to be more inclusive and those that also don't. I'm just interested to see if there's going to be more representation of men of color, just other ethnicities and whatnot, and if it'll be portrayed in like a positive light instead of that stigma and that stereotypical. This is what like Mexican dad does. This is what a white dad does. Like.
Which the Latino like dad is like super monopolized by George Lopez. Like that is the like like when people think of a Latino like Mexican dad, it's gonna be George Lopez. Versus there's a lot more diversity in some of the others. So
I think it's the same with Native communities too. What you're exactly talking about, because new movies came out just recently, right? Res Ball, it was one more updated one, but there's also missing of fathers in those films too, like. Where's a positive representation of father figures who are there, right, helping out and supporting the community. Right? So I think those are some things I kind of want to see too more.
That's true. Like the masculine type role is really put on. I don't remember her name. The coach.
Yeah, I forget her name too.
The one that played in like the WNBA. Yeah, that is interesting. Actually, that's a whole nother. I mean, we could have another episode on that. So yeah, I mean, thanks y'all for sharing.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I think we might end up following up a little bit more because I feel like we like barely scratched the surface in some of these things. It's interesting to think about in terms of representation, but we just gotta get some strong role models on screen. We gotta get y'all into television. Yeah. All right, thanks y'all.
All right.
We'll see y'all for the next one. We got at least another episode or two, I think, before one more episode before the end of the semester. Boss said so. So, all right, y'all. See you later.
See you.